Sam, appreciate the prayer. And once again, as usual, we are still in the Romans 1 words. The Romans 1 words. And with that, who needs a copy of the Romans 1 words at the back of the room? You got this copy of the Romans 1 words, or are you content to read along? It should be on. Green light was on. No, actually, I cut the green light off.
There we go.
Appreciate it. Green light is now on. All right. All right, with that. Romans 1 words. Who needs a copy of the Romans 1 words? And if not, please help us review, since we have folks who haven't been here for the Romans 1 words. Why am I spending so much time in the Romans 1 words, understanding that the sermons are not in Romans 15? Why are we lingering with the Romans 1 words, understanding that the sermons are at the end of the book of Romans? Yeah, me too. So what? Good. What's that? That's all right. Go ahead. Reminds me anyway to go ahead and, like I say, sometimes you got to get flowers out while people are with us. Not like we're expecting anybody to go, but spend some time on Sunday saying thank yous, right? And sometimes I overlook the obvious. Like I say, sometimes I don't like to hand out thank yous because it feels like I'm putting a target on people's backs. But it's not fair for me to not also thank Tony for all the things that he has done. Understanding that, he spends a lot of time preaching for congregations that don't have a preacher, right? He spent a lot of time since I first got here actually being a support in a lot of different ways. And he's not the only one, but I feel bad because sometimes when you're relatively close to a person, it's easy to leave them out. So I felt bad about leaving Tony out. Not to leave anybody else out either, but I've said thank yous over the last few weeks to different folks. I want to make sure I don't overlook Tony because it's easy to do that. And likewise, the brother who continually encourages me about, where are those shirts? Always sitting in the front row. He's a great gauge because he will not always tell you great job when it's not a great job. So when he says great job, it actually means something. So with that, likewise, my brother Michael. So it's not to leave people out. Like I say, I don't like to, just hand out thank yous like, because it feels like you're leaving folks out sometimes. But since Tony spoke up, it reminded me to say thank you. So with that, why are we help folks out? We got a lot of visitors here. Why are we still in the Romans 1 words? Yes, sir.
Well, two reasons I can think of. The first one is it's not always the same definition we use today.
Amen.
And the second one is that a lot of them are concepts that recur in the entire book of Romans.
Amen.
And we're now up to about chapter 15 in some of the other studies. But yeah, so the concepts are important in themselves.
There you go. We said, since the Bible is written in a different language than English, it's like the four loves. What was the illustration we got from the four loves? We have one word in English for love. However, in not so much the English. We have in the Greek, what are some of the terms we have for love in the Greek that give nuanced meaning to the term love? Phileo, brotherly love, right? What else do we have? Agape, the comprehensive love, right? What else? Affection. Let's go, right? Affection. We got one more. I spot that one's kind of awkward. The married love, right? Eros, right? Right? What's that?
Phileo and Philadelphia.
Yeah, the cognates for a city of brotherly love. Exactly. So that's the same thing we see in some of these words. So when we see a word like malice and evil, sounds like kind of the same thing in English, but who remembers what the nuance was between terms like malice and evil in our Romans 1 terms? What was the difference between malice and evil?
Seems like one of them was actions.
That's it. Evil talked about the actual habit or act of actually trying to harm another person. Malice was more like the stewing on it, right? And so if you look at the Romans 1 words, one of the reasons why we have them in two different translations is because we said in the King James Version, what was the difference between the King James Romans 1 words and the ESV Romans 1 words? 2 additional words in the King James. But also, even though the ESV has fewer words, they have a more clear transition. And so one of the reasons why, when we talked about that whole concept of malice, the concept of malice and maliciousness, those are jump off points for the sins that will follow. And so when we see full of malice, that tendency to stew on certain things, which is why we said later on in Ephesians, he'll say, try your best not to let the sun go down on your anger, your wrath, right? Because if you allow it to stew, it produces certain actions. And you see that in the list because we talked about it being a progression. So when you see the term malice, that's kind of a jump off point for, okay, then you've got envy and murder and strife, deceit, and then maliciousness. But then we said maliciousness was that tendency to, let's pick up there and read the definition since that's another jump off term. Who had the definition for maliciousness? Whoever wants to read that to give us a reminder. Or malignity, as it's literally said in the definitions I gave you all.
Well, on page 1, malignity, projecting evil tendencies.
That's it. But give me please.
And then the ESV is maliciousness.
Maliciousness. And so with the more extended definitions we have, I don't have the page's number, but it says page 3 of 8. It should say page 3 of 8 at the bottom in the extended definitions. What do we have for maliciousness or malignity?
Malignity, this word signifies here not malignity in general, but that particular species of it which consists in misinterpreting the words or actions of others or putting the worst construction on their conduct.
All right, and so that's the habit of putting the worst possible spin on something that's happened either between you and another person or something you've overheard or something. You can just spin it and basically just make it up, right? But it's putting the worst possible spin on it. And then it's manifested, it's a jump off point for whisperers. And what do we say about whisperers? What was the difference between whisperers and backbiters, the next 2 terms?
Whisperers are usually do it in secret. Backbiters are more open.
There you go. And so the backbiters, as long as you're not in the room, and in their absence last week, we used our brother and sister as an example of, it was for the good of saying when they made a nice answer a couple of weeks ago. I could, now that they're gone, put a spin on that good answer and be like, well, you know what, I really don't agree with that. I really think they probably should have studied a little bit more before they, no, that's backbiting, right? Because I'm talking about it in front of a whole class. However, if I pull somebody aside after class and I'm starting to be like, yeah, you really could have probably done a better job with that answer, knowing that you're probably going to, repeat that, that's the difference. It's the low key out of somebody's presence, saying something that you know, whether you know it or not, has a potential to be repeated in a way that is not healthy or helpful for the person that you should be going to directly in the first place. Why? Is that Marcus just making that up? Why should you go to them directly in the first place? Thank you. Right? It doesn't involve anybody else. And then scripturally, we got a very famous passage in the Gospels, Matthew chapter 18. If your brother treats you wrong, take it to your brother. And then we got the song. Sometimes you grew up in the churches of Christ. If your brother treats you wrong, take it to your brother and God alone. You say, brother, you treated me wrong, and you fight on. You fight on. So we got it in the word, we got it in common sense, and we got it in songs we sing that help remind us that there's a proper way to deal with disagreements. It's not necessarily suppressing it, but it's actually taking it to the person. And so what we're seeing here is there are times in life, and a lot of times the motivation can come, we said it before, in times when I haven't fully gotten in check my contentment. So Paul would write, godliness with contentment is great gain. So even if I do not walk around all day with the desire to put a negative spin on something that someone else does, it goes all the way back to Cain and Abel. If I get to a position where I am not content with where I'm at in my lane, I may have a desire, not necessarily to actually kill my brother, because that's not socially acceptable, right? That can cost me something. However, we talked about the whole concept of socially acceptable sins. And by the time you get to Jeremiah, one of the things that Jeremiah has to worry about is not the open killing. His life is in danger as well. But beneath the death threats, he's having to deal with those who want to slay Jeremiah with the tongue. Let us slay him with the tongue. And so it's that slander, it's that backbiting, it's that whispering that was the tool of those who really had it on their heart to kill Jeremiah. But before they could get the clout with the king to actually go to him and get permission to kill him, they were still trying to do it anyway by other means, right? And so we're going to see that in the life of the Christ as well. It's not so much the fact that he was consistently having conflict with the authorities, particularly in Jerusalem. It was the way it was going about. They weren't always directly dealing with Jesus. After they realized that the direct confrontations with Jesus were not producing the results they wanted, then they started to consistently do what? What were they consistently doing by the time they got back to the next open conversation with the Christ?
Saying that he was doing things by the power of Beelzebul.
They were doing that, but how were they concocting? Like, there was a time when he said they got together. Backroom, thank you. It's backroom conversations. That's it. And so they're cooking up their next set of words next time they see Jesus right behind his back and out of his presence so that they're ready next time. To reach an agreement? No, let's go Matthew 18 and tell Jesus why he's wrong. I don't care about that, right? It's how are we going to trip him in his words? Let's ask him a tax question next time. Well, okay, next time let's ask him a question about marriage. Well, no, next time that's not going to be good enough. Then you get him with this one, right? And so that's what we're seeing here. That's one of the reasons why it seems like it's important to go through these terms again, because what just seems like, okay, whispering and backbiting, well, that one seems like it's a little bit more likely to give us a nuance, but it's good to see the definitions here. It's all these different ways that once I get upset, and that's really what goes back to the whole concept of Jeremiah as well. It's not that if Jeremiah was a false prophet, he's failing on his own. You don't have to help him fail. The prophecies aren't coming true. But part of the reason they want to slay with the tongue is there's a difference between the words that Jeremiah is saying and what God is doing to actually endorse the words of his prophet, and what their words are falling flat. And so they have to do something to make it seem like there's not as much of a distance between what Jeremiah is doing and what they're doing, right? And so ultimately, that's the thing. It's the same thing by the time you get to the life of Christ. It's not that he's wrong. The fact that he's right, we talked about it before. It's sometimes part of understanding how to deal with success is understanding how to deal with that whole reality of the David type success. You slay Goliath, and sometimes it's like I say, it's like I don't want to sometimes I'm reluctant to say thank you to people I care about. You put the target on a person's back sometimes, right? And that's what happened to David. They were writing the songs. Saul killed his thousands. David killed his 10,000. And that was the beginning of the end of that period in the court for David. As soon as the songs got too good, right? The target went on his back, and the problems, they're famous now. And so sometimes the slaying with the tongue it's unintentional. It's like people who are intending to do well are actually harming you by recognizing too much what's going well. And so likewise, it carries forward. He's a man after God's own heart. And so when God sends his son, it's literally we're getting to see a preview of what's going to happen to the Christ. And so that's why these words are important. So flip that. And so, like I say, I have to overcome the temptation to always put myself as the hero in my own story. And so it's easy to want to try to identify with the Davids and the Jesus and whatnot. But I also need to know, what is it that tempts me to actually fall into that role of malignity? Of having those places where I thought I was happy until I saw how well brother or sister such and such were doing. And then now all of a sudden, I've got that same temptation that I know I hate when I hear the whisperings going on about me. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
That's why James 3 is so adamant about controlling the tongue.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. I mean, it's a small member that creates a lot of damage. Rudder can direct a large ship, or it can set large blazes of fire with a small spark. I had to think about that today. I hadn't had a good old rant in a while. I had one today, right around the time Brother Doyle came in. And I was like, oh my goodness. I got to go. I was just apologizing on Sunday. I got to go apologizing again, probably. Right, go ahead.
But it also says out of the same spring you can't get water and salt water. Bless God and curse men.
No, stop. And I'm joking, right? Seriously though. And that's the danger, right? You can get up here and talk about, let's read the definitions. Then I gotta live it, right? Eesh, mercy. So that's where, right? That's where the whole God willing, if it works right, I let it convict me too. So hopefully I can be more merciful next time I hear the whisperings, right? Doesn't give them license, but it helps me to calm down next time I hear the whisperings about me. Literally, that's Bible, right? I think I can't remember if it was Ecclesiastes or Proverbs, but it's Solomon going on about don't take it too hard when you hear folks whispering about you, because let's be honest, you done some whispering too, right? It doesn't give any of us permission, but God willing, it helps us calm down when we hear the whisperings, right? So it doesn't mean you cut a pass, but like our brother said, go to the person. Otherwise, you might stew on it because you were wronged, right? But the question is, how do I go about reconciling? I don't have permission to condemn. Otherwise, I got short memory for the times when I whispered or had my rant or fill in the blank. And God willing, if I had my rant, Brother Doyle didn't really hear what I was ranting about. God willing, it's just a warning. Mark, shut up. Right? You don't have to have the lesson with the damage done in a relationship. Hopefully it's just like they say, a near miss. And so with that, okay. And so we got the whisperers, we left out on backbiters. What was backbiters? Why was backbiters such, in some ways, for lack of a better term, such a sobering term? What was the synonym? Or what's the actual Greek word for backbiters? Or Aramaic, I don't know which it is, but.
The diablo.
There's diablo, right? Literally devil. And so likewise, it's not only translated as a devil, but it's translated in some passages that help us get a better understanding for the qualifications of leadership, right? We talked about that, right? Not necessarily the actual elders and deacons, but it specifically talks about the qualifications for a deacon's wife. But we said it's not just for the wives in positions of authority. It's who else was it for? Who else was it for who's supposed to be setting an example? All older women, right? So he uses that term, not to be slanderers. It literally says diablos. And then I forgot what the other ones were. In the last days, it's going to proliferate. And so even in the church, he's writing to Timothy. And we said, these are terms that he uses to each of his mentees, Timothy and Titus. And he says in that famous passage, in the last days, this is what they're going to start to do. It's one of those terms. They're going to start to be devils or slanderers. Is the connotation he uses for it there. And so even amongst the people of God, it's going to start to become normal for people to slander or run one another down outside of each other's presence. You're going to get out of the habit of going to one another and backbiting one another or being a devil is going to become the standard habit amongst even God's people, right? And so then he's going to talk to Titus about the same thing. Titus 2:3. That's the one where it talks about the older women. And then we saw in the book of Esther, to give you an example of another situation. This is in Hebrew, so I'm not sure. It's definitely not going to be the same Greek term. But for whatever reason, they said in the book of Esther, who was described using that term that's akin to a devil? Not too many. Haman, that's it, right? And so when you need a character description of what it's like to operate in the style of a devil or the New Testament term, diablo, look at Haman. Look at Haman and see the way that he went about backbiting to turn the king's ear against really his own interest. Because little did he know, he was trying to convince the king to kill his own wife. Because of a grudge that he had against one man, talked about a little bit on Sunday, that allowed him to indulge his hatred of an entire group of people, the children of Israel, right? And the method he chose to use to get even was the backbiting or taking on the characteristic of a devil, right? So this is another reason why we said that whole concept of do not let the sun go down on your anger. So once again, Haman was one of those characters where we see it was not enough for him to have everybody in the kingdom bowing down to him if he couldn't have Mordecai bow too. And he lost touch with the fact that there was nothing. What did Haman do that distinguished him to have everybody other than the king bowing down to him? What did he do? Exactly. And those are the times we're living in right now, right? Your actual ability has nothing to do with whether or not you can just get the position, whether or not you can just get the clout. And you lose touch with the fact that you never did anything to get the position in the first place. Now you simply feel entitled to have everybody bow. And if there's somebody in your presence who remembers, but I remember you when I remember you when they were going through the process. You were not the most qualified, right? But now you got everybody bowing and you got this one person that you're livid with because they're reminding you of what is actually true. I know I'm going off, right? But if you've had a job, you've been in that circumstance. I'm sorry I just think you have. I'm assuming, I've never met you, but I'm just assuming you might have seen something like that in your life. Right? And so in the last days, he's going to talk about those kinds of things are going to proliferate in a lot of ways. And so look at the way that Haman went about that to understand. Now that's maybe one of the reasons why we're going back through these terms as the Romans 1 terms. I'm sorry, brother. Yeah.
The other part of that, though, is we start to convince ourselves that we belong, that we deserve, that we earn, that it's ours.
Stop. That's too much. No, I'm not going to go ahead. But no, seriously though, it's a process, and we talked about the process out of Proverbs. These are progressions, right? And so it's one of the reasons why we talk about Hebrews all the time, especially chapters 3 and 4. He says, "Today is the day. If you hear his voice, don't harden your heart." Because sin does not simply stay isolated in the state that it does at the point at which we first start. It's habit forming. And so just like it says in Hebrews, by the time you get to Hebrews chapter 5 and 6, we said before, even though by now you should be teachers, you should have progressed in one direction, right? But you're progressing in another. And so now he still has to teach us first principles at a time when we need to be moving forward. But the enemy, I've used the illustration before. I can't remember. I don't remember where it came from. But the devil doesn't want your whole life. He just wants part. He'll take the rest. Right?
He's only got one trick.
What's that? Go ahead. The father of, right? And it's tried and true. I used to hear about, Bear Bryant used to call his off the wishbone offense Robitussin. Why did he call it Robitussin? A reporter said, "Coach, you running the same offense again this year?" It's like, haven't they all seen it before? He was like, well, it's just like Robitussin. They haven't changed the recipe, right? Like they say, if it ain't, they can know it's coming. If they can't stop it, keep taking it. If it's knocking out the cold, then keep taking it. He's like, I don't need to change the playbook. They know what's coming. They need to level up their game, right? And so that's the concept. If the lies are still working, and to this day, apparently they still are, even if they aren't the only thing that he uses, they're like we call it, it's like a gateway drug. And so I've talked about it before. When you get to Isaiah, like Isaiah chapter 5. Isaiah chapter 5. Matter of fact, let's turn there, because Isaiah chapter 5. It's one of those famous passages. It's just like Jesus issues the woes toward the end of his ministry. It's a chapter full of woes. And one of them is super similar to what our brother just said right there. Verse 18 of Isaiah chapter 5. Whoever wants to read. That just 18 is good.
Woe to those who draw iniquity with cords of vanity, and sin as if it were a cart rope.
Oh, give me another translation. I'm sorry. I should have looked that up in something else. What translation do you have?
New King James.
New King James. Okay, help me out. What are the translations we got?
New American Standard's pretty close.
Pretty close? What else we got? Oh, I see ESV is an outlier here. What? Nah, that's what I'm looking for. What's that one, Mama? NASB, right? I'm sorry. That's all right. All right. Yeah, that's it. I'm sorry. Yeah, Mama, that's it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You read it right. I was interrupted. All right. Cords of deceit, the ESV says cords of falsehood. And so, like our brother said, lying is a gateway drug. And so it's basically the tool through which we can drag all kinds of other things that we want to do. Talk about MacGyver from time to time. You can get out of all kinds of circumstances with not a whole lot. A rope is one of those things that I haven't done a whole lot of, construction for a while, worked on a farm for a while. Rope's one of those things that can help you out in a whole lot of circumstances.
Swiss Army knife.
The Swiss Army, right? The Swiss Army, right? Right?
I'm actually watching the series right now.
MacGyver, right? Thank you, Michael. The lies are the Swiss Army knife of a whole lot of wrongdoing and shadiness, right? right? So like our brother said, and that's what Isaiah is talking about here. He's warning them because they are now about to go into captivity. And he is helping them understand the things that are getting them drawn off there, right? And so with that, once again, that goes back to the Romans 1 terms, because one of the terms before you get to maliciousness is the whole concept of deceit, All right. I don't remember how my rant got us there, but it said backbiters is one of those terms that's synonymous, at least in the New Covenant, for the devil in certain circumstances. And Haman is one of those examples of a larger character study of how not being satisfied with what you have, not being satisfied with everybody else in the kingdom bowing down except Mordecai can get you in a whole lot of trouble if you do not take the advice that he didn't have at that time. But the Bible will eventually say, do not let the sun go down on your anger. There's other wisdom for that, right? And so it could have, even as bad as Haman might have been, if he would have simply realized the need to be content with all that he had, and the fact that he didn't deserve all he had in the first place, that he might have kept himself away from the sin that caused him to basically self-destruct. And so that's the lesson for us all. Godliness with contentment is great gain. Sometimes we think of it, it's the key to a huge fortune. No, sometimes the fortune is just getting to keep what you have by not self-destructing, right? And so contentment allows you not to lose what you have, even if it doesn't seem like it's everything you want, right? And so it's the thing that can keep me out of the kinds of things, even if nobody ever knows. It's not like God doesn't know, right? And that's one of the things I didn't so much mention as an illustration I had for Sunday. It's one of those things that even when I win, I lose, right? Go ahead, brother. I'm sorry.
The story of Haman is kind of difficult because we sit here and we see our less poetic justice. In the end, he got hung on the same gallows that he built to hang Mordecai.
Amen.
But our job is we should want Haman in heaven with us.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. I'm struggling to get there, but you're right. Right.
Try to teach him, but we see it as all right. God's wrath was poured out on Haman and Ted Bundy. We should want Ted Bundy in heaven.
I'm gonna ask you to pray for me on that one. You're right. I'm just gonna say you're right. But wanting and
Hopefully it's not our fault.
there you go. There you go.
If God desires that all men should come to know Christ in repentance, that ought to be our desire.
You're right. That is literally our desire, and so that has to be our prayer. That is literal Bible. But I also talk about boundaries, right? And so we had a great example. One of our sisters not too long ago was talking about boundaries in the young adults class. Meaning, as much as I might love family, you know that there's sometimes, as much as you love them, trust is still an issue. And so if you got kids and other family that you want to protect, there are sometimes you have to put boundaries around family that you cannot yet trust with everybody else in the family, right? And so that is one of the issues where, I might grow a soft spot for Ted, but Ted was pretty much where he needed to be until his sentence was executed because Ted got off before.
We got to grow them up.
Yeah. And then sometimes it's just prison is just, it's there for, we got it. Right, go ahead.
Well, and about 3 words from where we're at is pride.
Yeah, go ahead.
And pride is, here, let's read what it says. Pride is well understood. It's an inordinate self-esteem, an unreasonable conceit of one's superiority in talents, beauty, wealth, accomplishments, etc. That's from Webster.
No,
The
right.
existence of this everywhere there is abundant proof. And it was particularly striking about the ancients. The sect of the Stoics was distinguished for it. And this was a general character of their philosophers. Men will be proud where they suppose none are superior. And it is only the religion that reveals a great and infinite God, and that teaches that all blessings are His gift, and that He has given us the station which we occupy that will produce true humility. We may add that the system of heathenism did not disclose the wickedness of the heart, and that this was the main reason why they were elevated in self-esteem.
I'm not going to take that tangent, but go ahead. What made you think of going to pride at that point?
Because we can convince ourselves, as was already stated, that we earned it, we did it, it's all me. And I'm better, and I'm smarter, and I'm better looking than you are. So, that's what this definition is saying. That's the way prideful people are.
Bro, I'm going to pray for you for thinking that.
Well, and I appreciate that.
Anyway.
Didn't necessarily mean to make it personal. That was the content of what it said.
I did not take it that way. I was trying to add a little bit of...
It's personal now.
What was I know? You know what I'm saying? You said what?
I said you spoke it out loud. It's personal.
This is right. There we go. Right? Right. Let's go. That's funny. But yeah, I'm so you know me. I have a problem with tangents, and I really want to take one right there. But I'm trying to weave it back into the thought that I had before we talked about Ted. And, so I can't connect it. But I will say this, that with maliciousness, one of the things, we talk about self-destructiveness from time to time. One of the things is, even if, maliciousness is one of those things where even when I win, I lose. And so when I indulge these sins that follow the whole concept of malignity, if I effectively whisper and destroy someone's character, if I backbite and I'm able to persuade a whole room, the person who's not there is actually stinky, or whatever we want to say about him, right? Bottom line is, if I'm undermining someone else's ability to grow and progress and reach their potential, do you really think I'm going to hit my knees at night, pray to God, and have him maximize my potential in my lane? It's a delusion. And so even if I'm successful in destroying your character, that's the future I've set for myself. So even when I win, I lose. But I don't think that far ahead because I'm so mad at you that I just need the emotional salve to my hurt feelings that comes from being able to destroy you, not really realizing that it's only a matter of time before that cup that I filled for you, I got to drink too. And so that's why these, like he said, these are the traps of the devil. It's a lie that all I'm hurting is you. I'm really hurting me. And the more I lose touch with the fact that God is a God of justice, the easier it is for me to forget. I've been ignoring a whole bunch of Psalms that talk about this very thing because they seem like great illustrations, but I'm like, man, those are too mean. And I'm skipping over them again because I skipped over a lot of these when we went through the Psalms. And I'm just like, I'm trying to find a different way. Just no. But it reminds, like I mentioned, I think last week, that whole concept of the cup. And sometimes I get in the back of my mind, well, maybe I was making, no, both of those passages where it comes up again in the Revelation and comes up in the prophets. The cup of God's wrath. It's one of those things that I'm filling up every time I indulge that tendency to let malice turn into evil. He said there are very few, if any, times when it's a part of my ministry and my service to God that I should be actually trying to get in your way of reaching your potential in God. Now, if you're trying to reach your potential and doing something shady, yeah, we all have a responsibility to go to one another and handle it that way, as our brother said. But with that, we got other terms. And once again, I have not gotten very far through the terms that we've got. But we got to, I think, have I don't know. Well, just comprehensively, I'll try to hopefully finish this up next week. And there's some things I saw that I was hoping to get to that just didn't. But yeah, if you don't take anything else away, try not to let the sun go down on your anger. And pray for me, too. Like I said, pray for me to have a better desire, right? Better desire along the lines of what our brother said, because that's true. But likewise, please have God, the same God who understands how to allow his rain to fall, as we say from time to time, on the just and the unjust, to likewise set wise boundaries, even as we wish for the best, for God willing, for everyone. Because like what our brother said, it's in Ephesians as well. And what our brother says from time, says from time to time. Ephesians, our war is not with flesh and blood. It's not with flesh and blood, right? It's against the spiritual forces that are manipulating flesh and blood to get in each other's way. It's one of the things I liked about the first Matrix movie back in the day. Right? Are the agents our only enemies? No. The people around you, the other people locked up in the Matrix, they're not your enemy until the agents occupy their body and begin to take over their actions and allow them. But they're still not your enemy. They're simply being manipulated to get in your way, even though you're all trying to get free from the Matrix. That's Ephesians. As angry as I can get on the people that the enemy is using, they never become my enemy. And that's what our brother is basically saying. And that's so, so difficult to keep sight of. So with that, any questions? Anything else?
The enemy is strong in some of them.
That's all that looks. I don't need to say anything else. We end on that right there. Right? Anything else? All right, there we go. Thank you.